So yeah, I want to talk today about computer science across majors, across different fields of both academia and industry, because there's a reason you're taking this class, even though you may not be a computer science major. So we got to talk about why, what will you get out of this? What's the whole point? Is there a bigger picture somewhere? So the answer to this is a resounding no. Not is everybody just making a bunch of turtle drawing programs all day long? Of course not. But the things that you're learning kind of transcend drawing stuff with turtles and making cool things in Scratch. You're learning critical thinking as well as computational thinking, and that can be used everywhere. Computers have been introduced to so many different places in our lives and in all the different fields that exist in the world. So let's talk first about computer science in the world of social science as well as art. Can you come up with some ideas? Can you find some examples of computer science in this area that you know about? See if you can think of some, and we can start with a question for you if you'll go to the Written Ice page, elect a leader, and then post some of your thoughts. Do you know any computer science aspects, some people making programs or some programs that do cool things in this area? Open-ended. See if you can come up with any ideas that you remember off the top of your head. What are some examples of computer science in art, computer science in social sciences, etc., etc.? Think like Photoshop. There's one example. What else? Adobe. Yes. What is that? Give you another minute to write down some ideas, because we might all be thinking about the same stuff. Maybe we're not. We'll see. All right, let's see what we are thinking. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. Give me a second. Don't need that open today. Yeah, lots of graphic design programs. I think that's the idea. Nice. Even, I don't know if we count idle. But yeah, stuff that needs data. I like that, because that's what social scientists use. They're trying to analyze data, doing cool stuff. Yeah, digital art, I think. I gave that away, but you got the idea. Good. There's more to it. Let's think about it a little bit further. So, computational linguistics is one that we did not come up with, and I think we talked about it a little bit, but this is like a social science, right? Where you're trying to understand human languages, stuff like that. So all this field is, I guess I would count it as an area of social science. It's when computational linguistics is when you have human languages and you would like to evaluate them, understand them, do stuff based on speech or text that's typed to you. So you got your speech recognition, like your Siri, your Google, whatever, Alexa, all that kind of stuff. They need to understand what you're trying to say, and then they also need to speak back to you. So there's another field of speech synthesis that's really helpful for people with disabilities, as well as people who are trying to like drive and talk to Siri and stuff like that. So that's great, and it all kind of is based on this idea of natural language processing that we've talked about. It's when you're trying to you're throwing a computer at like not programming languages, but human languages like English. So natural language processing, or NLP for short. Here's a little quote. The ultimate objective of NLP is to read, decipher, understand, and make sense of human languages in a manner that is valuable. And so a lot of people on the internet think that valuable means we're trying to sell you things. But when you go to a website at like 3 a.m., there's this little automated assistant, right, that's there and looks like a human, and it's able to answer most of your questions correctly when you like type stuff and you click ask. That is natural language processing. They're trying to get at what you want. I think when I ordered this laptop from Apple, I did something wrong. I had to call somebody, and the phone line was mostly automated. Like I had to say what was wrong as me just talking to a robot for a while, and they eventually understood what I asked, which is really cool. So yeah, that's how far all this stuff has come. But yeah, let's talk about natural language processing when you're using like your phone, you're talking to Siri or Alexa or something like that. So let's think about like what goes on inside of your computer when you're running some sort of natural language processing program. Like you say in your voice, right? Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. What 5 minutes? What has to happen in order for your phone to actually have a timer for 5 minutes set? Okay, so one big process is this idea of speech recognition. Because you're talking to a microphone, you're saying this, that first needs to get translated into text in order for the computer to parse it and understand what's going on. So you have to translate voice to text. That's the first step. And that's a problem that used to be very hard, and it's mostly solved nowadays, which is great. Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. So even though I'm writing the same thing, there's a really big step that's taking place here. You're going from voice to text, or sound to text. And so some people, like if you have a very strong accent, and this is a hard problem still. But for the most part, it is solved. And so it comes up with this text for your voice, and then it needs to figure out what to do with these words that it just understood. So let me draw in green what's happening. So the first thing, when you use Siri at least, it's like you have to say, hey Siri. It has to notice those two words first because it's just listening. And maybe that's a little creepy, but it's just listening to everything you say until it hears the words, hey Siri, right? So that's like an activation. You need to wake up Siri. And then the rest of the sentence needs to get parsed until like there's silence and understood that that's all you wanted. So it needs to take the rest of this text and understand what you meant with it. So it needs to parse the sentence in the way that like maybe you did in elementary school. Like, all right, here's a verb. Here is the object, right, associated with the verb. Interesting. It's a transitive verb, right? And then it's like 4 or 5 minutes. It understands that that's one package phrase that talks about a duration. And so it needs to understand this because you might have said it differently. Hey Siri, give me a 5-minute timer, please. Like that. You'd have things in opposite orders and stuff like that. It needs to parse it no matter what. And so it's coming up with this. It's doing natural language processing and understanding what you meant. It's like, all right, set is a verb. All right, what do you want set for me? Okay, it's a timer. I know how to do that. I'm programmed for that. How long do they want it? I see. Okay, and then it goes off and it sets a timer for you. But do you see kind of all the different pieces that need to be all created and working together to understand your voice and get at what you wanted? It's really cool to think about, I think. we ever imagine like what's going on under the hood? So that's more or less it. It gets cooler than that, though. That's as high level or as low level as I want to go today for that. So that's natural language processing, area of social science. I would also say that human-computer interaction is a piece of social science. It's something that you can major in as a computer scientist. So this human-computer interaction is a field where people study the interfaces between humans and computers. So like back in the day, I guess maybe I clicked this program for a reason. Back in the day, everybody's computer looked just like this. It's just a bunch of text. Where you could like ask it things and have it give you little answers, and like it was all text-based and cool and fancy, right? That's all you get. So how far we have come. So that was the beginning of all that. And then some of these interfaces, just for fun, they work for like other animals. You've seen cats play little games on iPads, and the interfaces are still very similar. But yeah, at the very beginning, computers were all text-based. It was just a green and black terminal sitting in front of you, and you typed stuff and you hit enter and it did what you asked. Human-computer interaction researchers at Xerox, of all places, are to thank for your graphical user interfaces that you have today. So now that we have windows that we can open and drag and close, that's thanks to a copier company, surprisingly. And then they gave their ideas to Apple, and then Microsoft stole that idea at the same time, and like there was a whole big fight between them. There's some movies about that, but yeah, first was text, now we have Windows. And we're slowly, I guess, kind of making our way towards AR or VR, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality. VR, AR. You got like your Pokemon Go's and stuff. It's been a while since that came out. I don't think many people play it anymore, but hopefully we all understand what it is, right? This is a cute little app where like you go out and you walk around and like you have your image, it has your camera, and it like puts little pieces in front of you. It puts little Pokemon that you can catch. And so augmented reality or virtual reality is all about like making a new interface for you to interact with the world with, right? So it needs to like take your camera, understand where the horizon is, like try to understand like, is this ground flat or not? It's trying to figure out some coordinates so that it can put little Pokemon there that you can go and catch, and you're interacting with the world in a new way. Isn't that fun? And so I guess maybe the ultimate goal of like augmented reality is like you put on a little headset and then like you're moving with your hands all the windows. You're tapping them to close them. But we're definitely not there yet. Any questions about that? So that's all to make it easier to interact with a computer and get your work done, apparently. That's the goal. So we've come pretty far. It's pretty nice. But again, I would say that's social science. Let's talk about art. Plenty of things. So we thought about graphic design. What about like just music in general? Like the addition of computers to the music industry has given us quite a few cool advancements. Like electronic music, for example. The whole reason that exists, that entire genre, is thanks to computer science. People programming new sounds and having them be played back. So Yamaha apparently was the first company to implement a digital synthesizer. And yeah, there's a bunch of other apps that you can use to make music. Like maybe you've tried GarageBand on if you have a Mac, or like all the cool people there like Logic Pro or Ableton Live. All those things, all that software is made to make it easier for you to write and record music. So maybe we have more artists these days thanks to how easy it is to make music like this. How fun. And then even like some things that you wouldn't imagine are possible are now possible. Like you used to be able, if you wanted a cool sound on your guitar, you'd have to buy an expensive amplifier or like a pedal. But nowadays, you can just plug your guitar into a computer. So this is near and dear to my heart. If you just plug your guitar into a computer, or just the sound that you're extracting from it. Here's my best example of an electric guitar. Whee. If you plug that in and you make your little music, you can have your computer pretend to be a $10,000 amp, a really expensive pedal. or a combination of them. It's really, really cool. And so I think that's really thanks to machine learning, trying to like figure out what's so special. How is it bending the sound waves in the right way to sound like that? So they trained it on a real thing, and now everybody gets it. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, making music even. I think that we've come pretty far thanks to computer scientists, computer science, and the kinds of programs that have been made recently. Any questions, thoughts about that? Do any of us make our own music? Are we musicians? Because there's that, and then there's of course digital art, right? I saw a quote somewhere, maybe on Reddit, maybe on Instagram, like the best composers are probably writing music for movies because that's where all the money is right now. But probably the best artists that are alive right now are maybe painting digitally because that's how they're able to reach the biggest amount of people and get their art seen. So yeah, there's a lot of people that are working only in Photoshop, that are making like concept art for video games and stuff like that. That's all digital, and that's a completely new medium. And you're writing about that in your next essay, right? That'll be fun. And that's all 2D stuff. Like you have a little virtual canvas and all that fun stuff. But there's also 3D art creation, right? I took a few Blender tutorials on YouTube and made a cool thing for a friend once. But 3D artwork is totally a thing. Here's Blender, for example. It's an open source program where you can like sculpt 3D virtual clay into whatever you want and make it look cool. And have any of us tried that? That's super nice. And that's completely brand new. You needed a computer if you wanted any of that. Like we have that and like all of our 3D animation, like all of the fancy movies, like what you got, Toy Story and Shrek and all those fun things. Those wouldn't have existed. You'd have to animate them by hand before. Now a lot of cartoons have become created with the help of computers these days. It's faster to make things that way. That's pretty fun. Any questions, thoughts about that? So yeah, there's more to it than just drawing stuff with the Turtle library, but I'm trying to teach you all this generic stuff so that you can learn whatever language you want to learn and do cool things in your particular field if you're not a computer science major. So yeah, that's where we're going, I guess. Those are my ideas. Let's switch gears to like harder sciences and medicine, because computers have helped out there a lot too, right? So let's go back to our little question. So with the people sitting around you, please try to come up with some good examples of computer science or just computers in general being used to do something useful in the medical field or just some branch of science. All right, so give that a try and I'll clear this out. Give me a second to clear it out first, though. There we go. You can refresh the page. Try again. So, yeah. And what do you got? How have computers helped out those fields? more seconds. Try out. Think of what could you do? All right. Let's see what we're thinking. What you got? Nice. Yeah, robots that can do surgery. Absolutely. Uh, just like remembering to give people the right amounts of medicine. A computer is better at not forgetting and doing things, not messing up, usually, right? Uh, yeah, exactly. Giving people information, too. In general, I like that. So, yeah, good medical equipment, program to help with identifying things. Yeah, we'll get into that. That'll be fun. And then just like all of the, like, I forget the names, but all those little scans that you could possibly get, those are all like hooked into a computer somehow, and that's how you're getting the images. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, just space exploration and stuff like that. Also, I like it. So, helping people feel better, something like that. Cool. So, thank you. Good thoughts. Let's see here. I want to be on this page. But yeah, I have a few ideas. Let me tell you about them, and we'll go from there. So, one that I don't think we came up with that is very near and dear to my heart because we live in a place that is way too hot sometimes is I will check the weather all the time, like before I go running. How does one forecast the weather accurately? Back in the day, weather forecasts were not very accurate, right? You didn't have people hated the weatherman because they could not be trusted, something like that. But with computers, you can model the atmosphere better and come up with better forecasts that make sense and are more accurate through a longer time range. So here's what you do if you want to be a weather forecaster. You want to work in this field. You can model essentially the atmosphere by learning some physics. You got fluid dynamics equations that hold true, thermodynamics equations that hold true for like the different pockets of air in the atmosphere. But essentially, if you want to like understand Fresno's weather, you do this. You figure out like what's going on in like a chunk of air, and you like model that chunk of air. Like think of a rectangle of air essentially, and like there's some stuff going on at time A. This is time A for Fresno air, I guess. And you want to like learn how this weather works down in here. So if you put a bunch of sensors around Fresno, and they have those, and you have enough computers to throw the problem at, then it all works out. So here's like, let's say we put a bunch of sensors around Fresno that tell us like the current temperature, the current air speed, pressure, stuff like that. And we do that maybe across the whole country. So at time A, like the weather looks like this. You got your hot pockets, low pockets of air, weather, wind speeds, and stuff like that. With enough of that knowledge, you can predict what's going to happen to that pocket of air at time B. What will the temperature look like? What will the humidity look like? Stuff like that. Like, oh, the wind's going to blow this way now after here, more wind that way, etc., etc. That's pretty much the game. With enough sensors and your training stuff, and fast enough computers to make predictions based on what you're sensing, then you can learn how to forecast the weather. It's a kind of a machine learning problem. It's really cool. But the farther you try to like predict stuff into the future, it's still gonna it's like the butterfly effect. Eventually, your predictions are going to be a little bit wrong, but they're definitely more accurate than they used to be with people just like guessing based on a few sensors and humans making calculations. All right. So it's not the weather person's fault anymore. It's just like they need more computers and more sensors across the country. That's kind of cool to think about. But yeah, that's how you can forecast the weather. And that is definitely thanks to computers. And we especially have like earthquake warnings in Japan. We have like hurricane warnings, like all that stuff that didn't exist before that's helping save lives. So that's great. So there's that. There's also air quality forecasting. That's extra helpful for Fresno too. That has a very similar concept. You just you make a model of where the fire is and what the winds are, and essentially you can predict what's going to happen, right? So here's the fire right now. You can make, sorry, not even a fire, but just you have bad air over here. How's it going to move based on the wind patterns and stuff like that? And you can make models that learn how the air quality is going to change. And one thing that definitely changes the air quality is fires. If you remember during, I forget the last giant fire we had around here, but if you were looking at the weather forecast and the air quality forecast, they were completely thrown off. It was tomorrow's going to be 10 times worse air quality when that is practically impossible. It's because those fires were so unprecedented that they threw off the models. Crazy. So that was fun to think about. And now they have all that knowledge in their system now, but back then they didn't, which is really cool to think about. So yeah, it's just a computer trying to predict things based on what it's seen before at the end of the day. And as fires get more out of control in our ever-changing world, sometimes it's harder to predict things accurately. So that's interesting. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game with the prediction engines. And then also, yes, fires in general. You can make a model, and here's what the firefighters are using. They make a plot of where the fire is right now, and then they understand where the wind's blowing based on weather forecasts and things, and then you can write a little simulation program that's going to say, oh, the fire's going to move a lot in this direction overnight. Maybe you should focus on that rather than it might move a little bit in this direction. That's not as important. Something like that. That's pretty cool. And that can help you fight a fire better, and that's very important for us Californians, right? So any questions about any of that? Computers are helping us save lives and just figure out if it's going to be too hot tomorrow. So you can, I had a friend who majored in this in grad school. That's a thing you can get into, predicting the weather. So, all right. Medical field. Let's talk about genome sequencing, because this is relatively recent. I guess our generation is the first one that had access to it, really. The people of the group of humans alive today. So yeah, computers very recently, 2007, which is relatively recently in terms of scientific progress. Computers were able to obtain the most almost a complete sequence of human DNA. It's just for weird reasons they couldn't get it all. But back in 2007, they got everything worth getting out of some human. And so they got an entire strand of somebody's DNA, and they read it out, and they got it sequenced. And so, I don't know, we've taken biology before, right? Some weird combination of A, T, G, C, whatever, all those things, blah, blah, blah. We read that from a human. And we needed computers to do that, right? Because it's very small and it's a very long strand of DNA. Lots and lots of base pairs. So that was back in 2007. It was a really big deal at the time, apparently. And it was just engineering challenges to overcome, plus computer science challenges to overcome. And together, they sequenced an entire genome, and that is great. Okay? That is still quite expensive these days to sequence your entire genome, but it has gotten less expensive. Another company that also started in 2007 was 23andMe. Have any of us tried that? Sent in our spit to be analyzed or something like that? So that is, I forget what you have to swab. I think it's the inside of your mouth, right? So that was a company that still exists and is very popular still. I haven't tried it yet. But they test they can tell you what your ancestry is, because they've got a bunch of data from people born all over the world, and they can test you for what is your heritage. And then nowadays they can also write tests for whether you have a high risk of some certain type of genetic disease, which is very helpful too. And so it's also the medical field. So yeah, what 23andMe does, they started in 2007, and it's much cheaper to do what they're doing rather than to scan all of your DNA. But what they're doing, instead of sequencing your entire genome, they're just taking out little chunks and they're trying to match chunks. So like, I don't know the best way to draw this, but like here's your DNA. They're getting it all, of course. They're getting a bunch of copies of your DNA based on like the mouth swab or whatever you give them. And then they have a machine that's testing for if a bunch of pieces that they have pre-made, if they line up somewhere. Like, okay, that one lines up here, that one lines up here. So just little pieces, and that's easier to check for. This one lines up over here. And like some of those pieces are telling you like where your ancestry is. So like here is a map of, I don't know, here's Africa, here's Europe, and Asia over there, etc., etc. There's the UK. And they took a bunch of data from people who are local to those regions, and then they know like what DNA markers mean that, oh, you're from a Mediterranean place, you're from North Africa, stuff like that. You have heritage there. So that's kind of what they're looking for as far as genetics go. And then also just like they're looking for markers that give you high risk of genetic diseases as well. So that's pretty nice to have. But there's also, I guess people are a little worried about the data privacy of giving someone your entire like DNA so they can scan it. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's why I haven't done it yet. But it seems pretty cool, and that's a great advance that we've made pretty recently in the last few decades. Any questions about that? Thoughts? All right, yeah, I just have a bunch of examples today. That'll be mostly the lecture. We have to talk about cryptocurrency. We're going to do that next time. So let's move on to robotic appendages, because this is great. This is another piece of the medical field, and this is, again, a very relatively recent advance that we've made. So here's an image that I'm going to try to explain on the right. Oh gosh, have I lost my, oh gosh, I don't know what's happened here. I've apparently lost my ability to draw. No, does it work now? There it goes. Okay, don't know what happened. But I'm going to try and explain this image. I am a doctor, but not the right kind of doctor. So we'll see if I can explain it properly. But this is a really cool advance. All right, so I want to explain to you the difference between a prosthetic arm and a robotic arm, because there is a difference in those words, and I did not know the difference until I was researching it. So maybe you don't either. So here is a really cool thing that you can have if you have issues with your spinal cord, or if you've lost your arm. So in a body that has an arm and a working spinal cord, what happens when you want to move your arm, right, is like you think about it up here, and that moves, that sends a signal to your motor cortex, apparently, in your brain, and then there's some nerves that lead that into the muscles into your arm. It's like, all right, you can tighten or loosen or whatever, and that causes movement. So that's what happens in a body that has no issues. If you have lost your arm, you can get a prosthesis. You can have a prosthetic arm, and what they do with a prosthetic arm is they're still able to hook into the nerves down here to have that prosthetic arm move. You can read the electricity that's coming out of your nerves, those little impulses and stuff, and that will let your prosthetic arm move. And that is what people have if they just lost their arm for some reason, but they don't have a damaged spinal cord. Right? So that's a prosthetic arm. You can hook into the nerves at the arm itself, at the shoulder, for example, and that can be used to control the prosthesis. A robotic arm is different. A robotic arm is for people who have a damaged spinal cord, and so there aren't signals that are passing to your shoulder, for example. They're not getting there. And so in that case, what you have to do is read from the motor cortex in the brain. You have to go there and get the signals. That's what's going on, okay? So if you have a robotic arm, that's what's happening with you. You're reading the signals from the brain itself, and that's being hooked in to the robotic arm, okay? And so they used to have to do very invasive things, like you have to like drill a little hole or put some little pads on your brain, and that's how they hooked in before. But it didn't work too well, like jerky movements and stuff like that. A recent advance in 2019, there was a non-invasive robotic arm that got made, which is really cool. You just need to put sensors on somebody's head, and so I assume this was partially a machine learning problem that they had to solve here. they were able to read the sensors on someone's head enough to hook into the signals to move the robotic arm. You don't have to like do any brain surgery or like hook wires in a weird way. With the new kind of robotic arm that they have these days, you can just put little pads on somebody's head. And software can translate the thoughts of movement into moving your arm, moving your robotic arm, which is really, really cool. And so just think of the quality of life of improvement that is possible nowadays thanks to computer science and robotics. So that's just another cool idea that I wanted to tell you about. Any questions about that? Thoughts? So we live in a pretty nice age, I would say. All right. So this is definitely contrasting with our lecture about how horrible things have happened in computer science. We've got good things too. So, okay, we live in Fresno, so let's talk about farming. You can have little smart farms these days, and I'm sure if you know any farmers, they're doing this. It's saving and making them money. So if you are a farmer, for example, one thing that you can do to take advantage of computer science advances is to put little sensors around your fields. That would tell you like the properties of your soil. Like here's your field, for example. If you hook up some sensors in places, it's like here, here, and here, and in choice places in your field, you can like monitor, is the soil too wet, too dry, the properties of it, is it too salty, stuff like that. And that will give you better knowledge about what to do and which pieces of your field to work on, stuff like that. And so like you can have all these sensors, and they can be communicating their information to your house while you're asleep or just like hanging out. And so there's less work that you have to do as a farmer, which is great. Here's your house, apparently. And you've got a satellite dish talking to all these sensors, for example. That's pretty nice. Another cool idea that's possible these days is there's such a thing like self-driving cars that's not ready for prime time yet. But self-driving tractors totally exist. That's a very easy and solvable problem, right? Because there's no people to run into on a field. Yeah? So you can use GPS to just automatically control a tractor. It's very easy because you don't have any safety issues like you do on like roads and stuff like that. So like you can have your tractor like, all right, you can give it the coordinates of like the edges of your plot, and then the tractor can go off and like, all right, gonna go that way, gonna turn, go that way, plow this way, plow that way, and it'll just like do all that you want it to do, and you can be asleep. So that's pretty nice, right? This is a totally solved problem. There's nobody hit on your field. There's no traffic rules you have to worry about. It's just like give the GPS coordinates of the boundary of your field, and the tractor will stay within that boundary. It's really nice. All right. Yeah, self-driving tractors exist. Very, very helpful. And you don't have to, like, as a farmer, sit in one all day long if you don't want to anymore. So that's saving you time and money, probably. And then just like the fact that you have all these sensors means that you have a lot of data that you could extract information from. And so big data is a fun buzzword that just is a field that tries to make predictions based on the data that you have. And now you have more thanks to all these sensors and things on your smartphone. Okay. And maybe that will help you plan ahead for the next growing season. And I guess make more money, right? Because that's the goal of a business. So yeah, the more sensors, the better your predictions, and the more you can know that you didn't know before these advances were made. So yeah, maybe that's near and dear to our hearts as Fresnans. So smart farms. Any thoughts about that? Or any of us farmers? Very, very helpful stuff, I would say. And then I got 2 more ideas, and that'll be it for the day. Let's talk about space. Space is important, right? Everything that we've done involving space has been thanks to computers. So that's one thing to say, and I think we all figured that out, right? Just if we want to look at space these days in a nice way, we're going to make a telescope, usually that's controlled with software, right? If you are on Earth, you have like a really high looking, like you put a telescope way up in, like here's South America or something, some very high up mountain range. You put your telescope, and you can have it just track a star, for example, or track a galaxy. You can have it like point that way. Here's your star. Look at that, please. And you can just follow it. So that's nice. That's something that you would have to do manually before. And then you have plenty of space telescopes, and those are the cool ones. They can see the fanciest stuff. And obviously those are also controlled with software. It's like turn yourself a little bit, little telescope, so that you can look at the star over here and then turn this way and zoom in, zoom out. All that kind of stuff you can just send to the telescope wirelessly. It's all data you're transmitting, and that is, of course, thanks to computers and computer science. And it's sending the data, it's sending the images back and all that fun stuff. So that is definitely something that we can thank computer science for, I would say. And then just satellites in general, roaming the Earth. You have them, like, that's why we have GPS, and that's making it easier for us to drive places, and it's making it, like, if you have the latest iPhone, if you get, like, stuck in the mountains somewhere with no signal, you can talk to, like, you can call for help with there's like a satellite receiver built in nowadays, apparently. All that kind of fun stuff. It's helping advance our lives and make us safer, I would say. That's pretty cool. Thanks to space and computer science. And then, like, all the rovers that we have, too, those are controlled, kind of like the satellites. They're controlled with just you transmitting data, saying, hey, rover, go do this, go drive over this way, go analyze the soil beneath you right now and give me the data back. All that fun stuff. So we have not sent a human to Mars, but we've sent some rovers, and they've done some cool work. And that's thanks to computer science and, of course, engineering and all the other teams that were involved. But computer science was a key piece of the puzzle, I would say. Yeah. Any thoughts, questions about that? Because I want to give you what maybe is the coolest thing I can think of. It's the most recent thing, and it's super exciting. I think that there's going to be a really good future if they can keep scaling this well. It's called protein folding. Have we heard of that phrase before? It's very, very cool. Back in 2020, there was a really big breakthrough, and it was in this idea called protein folding, and it used machine learning, of course. Machine learning is so popular these days. What protein folding is it's when you predict the structure of a protein. And again, I'm not a biologist, but let me try and explain it to you what's going on in a protein. That's what your DNA encodes, by the way. Like you have your DNA, and that is encoding some sort of combination of amino acids, right, that are hooking together in order. And for some weird reason, I don't know the specifics, but when your DNA like tells the cell to build this chain of amino acids into this protein, they start like moving around. Those amino acids, like they interact with each other, and they start like crumpling up or expanding and stuff like that. And they start like coming together in a weird three-dimensional way, right? They fold, we say. Proteins start to fold. And the way that they fold, like they look like this in 3 dimensions, the way that they fold tells you how they can interact with other proteins, okay? That's the goal. And so, like, here's a bunch of proteins interacting with each other, and they're hooking into all the different pieces based on the way they fold, which is really cool. And so the idea is if you can study the way and predict the way that a protein folds, you can have it like serve as a catalyst to a reaction, make one happen that wasn't happening before, have it inhibit a reaction, make something stop that you didn't want to have happen. And I think you can imagine that both of those would be very, very useful in medicine. That's the goal. All right. So if you can like just predict the way that proteins are going to fold and interact with other proteins, then you can make new medicines and save people from things that exist that we don't have cures for yet. So that's pretty nice. And so this team, I think it was Google actually, there's a team called AlphaFold, and that's the name of their machine learning software. They made a second version of that, and it was so accurate, it was light years ahead of the competition. There was a competition in 2020 about protein folding prediction, and like it blew everybody else out of the water. It was like getting up into the 90s of accuracy, where everybody else was like in the 70s or something. It was not a fair fight, and they even thought that they cheated. Like they gave AlphaFold just to make sure that they were playing fair. They gave them a protein sequence that had never before been analyzed. And then they confirmed that AlphaFold said it was going to do the right thing, that it folded in that exact way that it said it would. So it's crazy how good this is right now, and it's just going to get better, which is great. And so, yeah, the moral of the story is the better you can predict the shape of a protein, the better you can understand like how cells work, how they interact with all the different pieces inside of each other, and then you can start making medicines that because at the end of the day, what are your cells doing? They're just moving around proteins. That's what your DNA encodes anyway, and that will, I don't know, help us live longer and help us cure things that don't have cures. So that's really exciting to me, and hopefully that they keep making those advancements. Have we heard of any of that? Any questions about that? I think it's a really fun idea, and it's a great example of machine learning. It's like, I don't know how this thing's going to fold. Just show me the way that some other things folded, and let's have the computer figure out how they did it. It's pretty nice. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about all that. If we are good, I think that is everything for the day. I do want to give you a new extra credit opportunity if you were not able to do the last one. I'll give you that next time though. So it'll just be the lecture today, and the rest of the time can be yours to work on existing stuff.